Lots of people are asking me what will happen to the economy with a potential World War III on the horizon. Well, if you look at the crypto market as of February 28th, it's been on a tear with reports that Russia and Ukraine are buying up Bitcoin since their own financial institutions are going through a lot of drama. But even with that happening today, how is the real estate market and other things going to be affected if we do go into a full-on war? Well, let's talk about it. If you're new to my channel, my name's Pineda. I'm a real estate investor and entrepreneur, and the goal of this channel is to help people live the wealthy way. If you go to wealthyway.com, you can learn more about it and get all of our free resources. Now, first off, let me address the people in the comments who are going to say, why are you worrying about the economy? There are people dying and there's a war going on. And let me just say, I understand where you're coming from. I don't agree with what Russia's doing, and my heart goes out to all of those families. But I think it's important to talk about these things because your life is going to be impacted by what's happening over there. Now, as far as war in the economy goes, the very first time I ever heard about the impacts of war on an economy were back in 9th grade history class. I've always been a big fan of history because you can learn so much from what's happened to this point to make better decisions of things that are going to happen in the future. And I don't remember much about that class, but I do remember one aspect that really stuck out to me because it was odd. At the time, we were learning about the Great Depression and how bad it really was. This was around 2004 for me, so we had not gone through the Great Recession yet of 2008. And I remember my teacher talking about how bad this depression was. Well, as the story goes, FDR is elected the president under his campaign promise of starting the New Deal. And for those who don't know, the New Deal was essentially a stimulus package. They were going to try and create new jobs along with all of these other things to stimulate the economy. Now, as my teacher was telling this story, I thought that the New Deal was going to be what got us out of the Depression. FDR had all this hype and it seemed like a really solid plan. But then my history teacher said something that I'll never forget, and it's probably the only thing I remember from that class. He said that it wasn't the New Deal that got us out of the Depression, it was actually the start of World War II. You see, World War II created a ton of new jobs and spending that didn't exist before. Americans had to go join the military like never before. Companies had to be created to go produce weapons like never before. And all of the other things needed to accommodate war, like food and travel, had to be amplified as well. And it was through all of this spending and job creation that finally got us out of the Depression. And it took a war for those things to be needed. And recently on Twitter, I've seen people sharing this chart which shows the economy after each of the biggest wars. And by the way, if you're not following me on Twitter yet, make sure you go and do that as well because I share a lot of great content over there. But on this chart, they show the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the Iraq War, and as you can see, it always does the same thing. Basically, every time war is declared, people get really scared because there's going to be a lot of death, and in turn, the markets tank. But after that, the markets always skyrocket up. And when you think about it, it sounds awfully familiar to something that just happened. But this time, we were fighting a different kind of war. It wasn't us against another country, it was us against a virus that was killing people. And we saw the exact same thing play out from this war on COVID. With the announcement of this deadly virus, all the fear and the restrictions, it caused the markets to tank. But once the dust settled and things started to open up, the economy then started to go on a tear. And you can say, well, they printed all this money and all of this other stuff. But here's the thing, when you're trying to make predictions on the future, you can't just think of what should logically happen with no intervention. You've got to anticipate some type of intervention, especially if there's a history of governments intervening to prevent this kind of stuff. And if you watch some of my previous videos, I've been talking about something like this happening for months. To sum it up, I predicted that they were going to announce interest rates would rise. And with that announcement, it was going to cause a negative effect in the market because people were not going to like that. And my main prediction was that something would happen that would give them an excuse not to have to raise rates and still allow them to print money. And I didn't know what that reason would be, but I figured it would be something, whether it was COVID, whether it was a supply chain issue, or whether it was a war. And basically, this Russia situation is going to give the government another excuse to either keep rates where they are and not raise them, or potentially lower them again. But I'm going to guess with pretty high confidence that they're going to announce more stimulus because they need to finance some kind of war. That doesn't mean that they're gonna finance a war where people are fighting and dying on the battlefield. It could be a war that they're financing economically. As you've already seen, the first thing the government chose to do with these sanctions is cut off Russia's economy. Countries have realized the way to wage war is not necessarily how we used to do it with all of these battles, but it is to do it economically. We've already been doing it with China on this trade war. So it's my belief that the government is gonna use this to print more money and keep the economy economy chugging along at its current pace. And as an American, whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, all that matters for you is how you choose to react to what happens. And for me, I don't believe that this will cause a recession by any means, and in fact, it has the potential to make the economy go even crazier. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you got value out of this video, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.